Hi, folks. Welcome. Practice today that's available is exploring movement of your joints, lubricating your joint muscles, joint bones, um, noticing the range of motion that might be useful in particular joints. So there's no right or wrong way to move your joints in this practice. It's more an invitation to notice what range of motion, what pace feels supportive as you move through this practice. So, and the beautiful thing about contributing to movement in your joints is when your joints are open and there's fluidity in your joints, it makes it more available for our emotions to have fluidity and movement as well, and our energy to have movement and mobility as well. So thank you for joining in this practice today. What you might want to have available is a blanket that could be useful to sit on. You might place it as extra padding underneath your knees. Some of you might be interested in having some blocks available, different heights to the blocks that might be useful. I might cue the use of the blocks at some points, and you might choose to try them in different shapes and forms without me cueing them. So, an opportunity to begin today is to come down onto your back body. So, taking what time you need to make your way to your back body. And you might consider having your feet to the edge of the mat and your knees leaning in to rest against one another. And taking this opportunity to land and locate. So, you might notice where the contact points are at the back of your head with the ground, or contact points your upper or lower back might be making with the ground, or perhaps your feet. And shifting or moving is welcomed to support that noticing. Another option is to notice that ground underneath you, gravity beneath you, might be supporting your body to be where it is now. That support is available for your bones, your tissues at any point. And you might check to see if it's available today to receive 1 or 2% more of that support from the surface beneath you. Maybe bringing your hands to rest in your lower outer rib basket. Perhaps the tips of your 2 middle fingers are touching over your abdomen. And there's an opportunity to bring awareness to any movement taking place underneath your hands. So you might notice a raising and lowering of your ribs, one possibility. You might notice the tips of your middle fingers separating as you breathe and coming back together. Maybe adding some breath is of interest. And throughout your practice, you get to breathe like you. You could breathe in and out of your nose. You could be breathing in and out of your mouth. And when you're ready, releasing that inquiry and bring yourself up to a supportive seated form. One way you might do that is bringing your hands to the back of your legs and rocking and rolling the length of your spine a few times to bring yourself to your supportive seated shape. Taking what time you need to get there, noticing if you want to have a pillow or a blanket to raise your hips. That sometimes can support tension you might be experiencing in your lower back or hips. Once in your supportive seated form, there's an option to create movement of your head and neck. And so you might bring one ear towards one shoulder, maybe your right ear towards your right shoulder. Any amount. And that might stretch the left side of your neck. Could remain here. You might bring your right hand to the top of your head, choosing the amount of contact or pressure you'd like to place on your head with your hand. Another option is extending your left fingertips onto the ground away from your body. That might amplify some sensation in your shoulder muscles or your neck. Perhaps noticing that you're breathing. And then when you're ready, releasing that shape, making any adjustments. And you might bring your left ear towards your left shoulder. A different choice might feel supportive on this side, depending on what you're noticing on the muscles and the right side of your neck. Option to bring your left hand to apply some contact to your head or pressure. Maybe some of you want to reach your fingertips of your right hand away from your body to explore increasing the stretch in your shoulder or your neck muscles. And then when you're ready, releasing that stretch, releasing that shape, making the adjustments with an invitation to perhaps lower your chin towards your collarbones and rolling it towards one shoulder. Maybe back to center and rolling it towards your other shoulder. Beginning to create some half or full circles with your head and neck. Finding your pace of movement. You might continue here for 3, for 2, or 1. Taking what time you need to come back to neutral. With an option to bring your palms together in front of you. And you might even notice your hands making contact with one another. An option to interlace your fingers and perhaps bringing your elbows towards one another to support rolling your wrist joints. And there might be crackling or sounds or sensations in your wrists. Perhaps moving them in a different way is of interest, a wave-like motion. Or maybe shaking your wrists out, wiggling your fingers. And perhaps bringing your hands back together, interlacing your fingers, maybe pressing your palms away, stretching in behind your shoulder blades. An option to explore. If you'd like, reaching your palms up towards the ceiling, bringing some length to your rib basket, the sides of your rib basket might lengthen as you lean side to side. Maybe coming back to neutral with an option to bring your hands, your interlaced hands, to the back of your head and neck. And you might take the opportunity to rest your head back into your hands. Maybe your hands receiving some of the weight of your head and noticing what that support from your hands might offer, if anything at all. And some of you might choose to remain here longer. There's also the option to begin to draw your elbows towards one another as you continue supporting your head and round your spine forward any amount. Your chin might come towards your collarbones. And then perhaps stacking one vertebrae on top of the other and opening your elbows any amount to the side. Your collarbones and chin might come towards the ceiling. Maybe beginning to move between rounding forward and lengthening, opening towards the sky. So you might find a range of motion that feels supportive for your vertebrae, the joints of your spine, rolling and rounding and lengthening and expanding. Breathing like you, your rhythm, your pace. Maybe continuing for 3, for 2, and for 1. When you're ready, consider releasing your hands at a pace where your head and neck muscles might begin to receive the weight of your head and expanding your arms out to the side. If you'd like to contribute to movement of your hip joints and your leg joints, you might take a moment to remove padding underneath you, perhaps untucking your feet, and you might place your hands behind you to support your back body. And your feet could be close together, they could be further apart, perhaps beginning to roll your knees or lower your knees any amount towards one side and then the other side. So your range of motion might be different to my range of motion. So encourage you to find a size of movement or a range of motion that feels supportive for your knee joints, your hip joints. Maybe finding a rhythm, side to side. If you're creating this movement, you might look at your feet. You might see your feet moving side to side. Another way of experiencing your feet is perhaps feeling, perhaps seeing if today you might feel your feet rolling side to side. Maybe continuing for 3, for 2, for 1. When you're ready, coming back to neutral and taking what time you need to come to your tabletop shape. So checking to see if today having some extra padding or cushioning underneath your knees would feel useful. Your hands underneath your shoulders, maybe your fingers are spread wide to press into the mounds of your knuckles to support distributing the weight from your wrists. Option for movement here might be shifting your hips towards your heels. You might tuck your toes to stretch the muscles in your feet. Your shoulders might come up over your wrists, maybe even past your wrists. Stretch your muscles in your hands. Perhaps finding your pace of movement, noticing if pausing in stillness in a particular location feels supportive. When you're ready, you might come back to your neutral tabletop. And one way to begin creating movement in your shoulders might be to press into your hands and begin to raise your shoulder blades towards the ceiling. So your upper back might round towards the ceiling. And then releasing that effort and allowing your collarbones and your ribs to come towards the ground. So you might press and round your upper back and your shoulder blades towards the ceiling and then allow the lowering of your upper back. That's one way you might choose movement for your shoulders. Another option to explore is maybe beginning to roll your shoulder blades back towards your hips and then forward. So it's almost like rolling your shoulders, except you have your hands stabilizing you on the ground. It might take a little bit of time to discover and explore this movement. There's no right or wrong way to do it. You might notice sensation building in your shoulder muscles or your joints. Taking a break whenever you need. You could continue here. Another option for movement of your shoulder joints and your upper back is beginning to bring your hands off your mat. So it's a wider stance for your hands. And you might turn your fingers so that they're facing away from your mat. And perhaps beginning to bend your left elbow and lower your right shoulder down towards the ground, any amount. And then rounding your upper back towards the ceiling to slide over. So you're bending your right arm and your left shoulder's dipping towards the ground. So if you're choosing to engage in this movement, I want to acknowledge that your movement today might be small and subtle movements from one side to another. Or your movements might be large movements where your shoulder might come close to making contact with the ground. I'm here to offer suggestions. You get to make choices that support your body, your joints. You get to be in charge. And perhaps continue with your choice for 3, maybe for 2, and maybe for 1. When you're ready, coming back to your neutral tabletop with an invitation to step your right foot forward between your hands, maybe taking what time you need to pivot your lower left leg so that it comes perpendicular to the length of your mat. So your right toes might be facing the top of your mat, your lower left leg behind you. If movement of your hip joints is of interest in your knee, perhaps shifting your knee over or beyond your right ankle and then over towards your left. So noticing range of motion supports your right knee, your left knee, your hip joints within this shape. All choices are of equal value. Maybe coming back to neutral with an option to extend your right leg so your foot comes parallel with the top of your mat. Your hands might come to the ground in front of you. And this might contribute to sensation along the inside of your upper leg. You could have your back foot untucked, or you could tuck your toes, maybe shifting your hips back towards your heel any amount of your left foot, and then maybe shifting your shoulders over your wrists. So a similar movement to when you're in tabletop, but you might be experiencing some different sensation in the inside of your right leg muscles. So you get to choose your range of motion. If you're choosing movement, a static or still stretch might feel most supportive for you today. Maybe you continue here for 3, for 2, and for 1. As you're ready, an invitation to bring your right knee next to your left, and perhaps tucking your left foot so that your toes are facing the top of your mat and your right leg is facing behind you. One side might feel different to the other, so you might make a different choice on your range of motion on this side, depending what you're noticing in your knees or your hips. Maybe you notice that you're breathing. And then when you're ready, an invitation to lengthen your left leg, bringing your foot parallel with the top of your mat. Your hands might come to the ground, coming into a tabletop shape with your left leg extended. Noticing if you'd like to remain here in stillness. It might feel like enough sensation for the inside of your left leg. Or if there's an interest to tuck your right toes and begin to shift your hips, your seat towards your heel, and then maybe your shoulders over your wrists. Finding your pace of movement, your rhythm, if you're choosing movement today. As you're ready, beginning to come back to center, bringing your knees together, taking what time you need to back towards your heels, and you might transition yourself down onto your back body. So you might bring your hands back of your legs, or you can have your fingertips out in front of you and roll yourself down to the ground. No rush to get there, adjusting yourself as you need. And if you'd like, You might take a moment to bring your hands to rest over your lower outer ribs. Maybe the tips of your middle fingers are touching. Perhaps bringing awareness to any movement taking place underneath your hands. Breathing like you. And if you add some breath, that might create more movement underneath your hands. Perhaps continuing for 3, maybe for 2, and for 1. Preparing for your resting form, which might be with your feet on the ground and your knees leaning against one another. Or you might extend your legs down to the bottom of your mat. Your hands could rest on your body or on the ground next to you. Noticing if a lengthen inhale and lengthen exhale is of interest. Your eyes might be open or closed. Perhaps tucking your shoulder blades underneath you. Noticing your head resting on the ground, the support of the ground underneath your head. Or maybe noticing your upper back or lower back resting on the ground. Option to bring awareness to your legs resting on the ground. As you make any adjustments to during our time, that we might pause and choose some quiet moments together. You might remain here longer. There's an option to begin creating movement of your fingers and toes, your hands and your feet. Perhaps reaching your arms up overhead, stretching or moving, allowing any spontaneous yawn or breath down to emerge. And if you're on your back body, you might roll over to one side. Pause a few moments resting on your side. And then taking what time to bring yourself up to your supportive seat. No rush to get there. And once in your supportive seat, your eyes could be open, they could be closed. Maybe one or both hands come to rest below your collarbone. Taking an opportunity to offer yourself some kindness or gratitude for showing up on your mat and making choices that support your body. And if there's a higher power, higher source you'd like to take a moment to honor, welcome to do so. And when you're ready, releasing your hands, perhaps allowing light to enter your eyes if they're closed, starting to take a look around your space, starting to receive color, receive texture. Notice what you might be appreciating in your surrounding. You might notice doorways or windows, and some of you might be interested in turning to look behind you. Thank you for choosing to show up today for your practice. I look forward to next time.